Hello everybody, I'm Carl von MuDi, and as a former cellist and videographer for classical music, I did last week one of the first professional recordings of the new Chopin Waltz. As I was working intensely with this new piece, I wanted to know more and more about it, so I reached out to Robinson McClellan, the person who found the manuscript at the Morgan Library in New York. And I'm very happy to talk with him about the discovery, the piece itself, its value for the music world, and much more. Musical Dimension Talks, first episode. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Robin.
It's a pleasure. Nice to speak with you.
Great that this time works for you. It's early morning in New York, afternoon in Germany. Where are you joining me from right now?
Yeah, morning in New York. I'm here at the Morgan in my office.
Can you tell me, how did you feel when you first saw this little piece of paper or a postcard, how I heard in the news?
So I felt cautious at first. I was excited, but I think something like this is so unlikely that I assumed it was probably not going to be what I thought what it looked like or what I thought it was. It said Chopin at the top. It looked like his handwriting. I've seen many Chopin manuscripts. We have many others in our collection here at the Morgan Library. But of course, it could have been a forgery. I just didn't know. So I printed out a copy and brought it home and played it a little bit on the piano, or plunked it out. I'm not really a pianist, but I played enough to hear the melody. And then I began to get a little excited because it really wasn't a piece I had ever heard. I looked through every other Chopin waltz in A minor that I could find and that I knew didn't match any of them. And there were a few that were listed in the thematic catalog as lost. So I thought perhaps it's one of these lost A minor waltzes. So I quickly contacted Jeffrey Kalberg, one of the leading Chopin experts at the University of Pennsylvania. And he's the person people call in when they want to be absolutely sure that they are, that something is authentic. His depth of knowledge is just incredible. So he was also excited.
But
yeah.
Just romantic music, or what he's
particularly in Chopin, he's an expert in the music of Chopin. So he has written, a lot about it and has seen pretty much every piece of paper that Chopin ever wrote on.
Great,
so
great.
he was also very excited. He described his reaction as that his jaw dropped, and that he said, "I've never seen this before. It looks like the real thing." But of course, he was also cautious and quickly came to the Morgan to see the manuscript in person, which you have to do to really be certain of the handwriting. And he studied it very, very carefully. We brought it to the conservation lab here at the Morgan, our paper conservators, who are, of course, experts in the physical nature of the material. And they also confirmed that it was paper from the right time in the 19th century, that the ink was the right type. If they had said, this paper was manufactured in 1975, then we would know that it was, that it was a fake. But it all checked out. It all matched the time period, and the handwriting all matched up. So we started to think that it was the real thing.
Wow, great, amazing. So it was said that it's a postcard, right?
That's one of those things the news kind of got.
All right.
There's a few things like that the news kind of when it passes from one to another. It's a piece of paper. It's a manuscript paper. It's just very, very small. It's the size of an index card. So it's and that's one of the things that was surprising about it, because most of the Chopin manuscripts we have in our collection are larger. They're more typical sized piece of paper. But what we learned and what we think is that it was, and there are other manuscripts of Chopin of this size, of this very small size, and they were typically given as gifts, and that's why they're so small. So he would write out a short piece on this tiny paper and hand it to a friend as a gift.
All right, like when he goes to a dinner party, instead of bringing some wine, he's all right.
Yep. Yeah.
I would have invited him.
Be so lucky if you could be so lucky to be the recipient of one of those. Yeah.
Wow, great. And so the physical examination, I understood. And what other things were there? So the bass clef, I heard
Yeah, the
is
bass
was one
clef.
indicator. Clef,
There
yeah.
were that was one of several examples. You know, the New York Times article showed the sort of unusual way that he writes the bass clef, and there are other, and it, you know, other manuscripts of his have a very similar one, and that was just one of several you know, aspects of the handwriting that were very distinctive,
Hmm.
that give it a sign that it is genuine Chopin. You know, there are people that have copied his handwriting and imitated it, and one of the things Jeff Kalberg is able to do is to distinguish. He's seen many of those same forgeries as well, so he's able to actually draw those subtle distinctions where you can say this is really the genuine thing.
Wow, great, interesting. What's the value of this discovery? What do you think?
Yeah, no, the value for the world and for the world of music and music lovers and, you know, scholars and pianists, I think is enormous. You know, and that value is really comes in the way that people respond. And so someone, you know, as I said, I didn't know quite what to expect for the response. People may, you know, it could have been that people say, "Oh, that's interesting," and, you know, it's a cool little news article, and then they forget about it.
Yeah.
Um, I've found that the value has been felt very genuine. People feel genuinely moved, not only by partly by the music, the piece of music. It's quite a beautiful and lovely little
Yeah,
short
yeah.
piece. But also, I think there's a real love of Chopin. He's a composer that has this personal appeal and meaning for people on a very immediate level. People almost feel like they have a personal relationship with him and with his music, both as like for example, my mother used to play Chopin at the piano, and she's not a professional musician, but it had
Yeah.
this personal meaning, and I think that's true of many people. Um, and she still does, of course. And
Great, great. Yeah.
you know, and so I think and then of course in the world of scholarship, it's very important because it's a new addition to the catalog of Chopin's works. And I should qualify that because there's still some discussion about whether it is a piece written by Chopin, composed by Chopin. We're very certain that it's written by him, meaning he wrote it down on this
Hmm.
piece of paper and it's a genuine piece of his handwriting. There's some debate as to whether it's perhaps a piece that he copied down of some other sort, or maybe it was a kind of exercise that he worked on with a student rather than a kind of so-called serious composition.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and we can't really know for certain, probably. Scholars are kind of debating that right now. But what I've noticed in the past week is that across the internet, on the news and YouTube and social media, people feel kind of on a visceral level that it feels like Chopin. Like when they
Hmm.
listen to it, they feel this sounds like the real Chopin. You know, and that's not a scientific measurement, but
Yeah.
there's been such a kind of consensus or a sense of you know, there's so many people that I think have felt that way, that it feels to me like a convincing argument that it's the real thing. And
Yeah.
even there have even been some people on YouTube analyzing the music and saying, you know, this is a very typical thing that Chopin would have done. For
Hmm.
example, with the way that the harmony works, or the way that the, you know, details of the melody, that only Chopin ever would have thought of something like that. And of course, again, that's not a scientific measure, and there are
Yeah.
other people who maybe disagree, but it's and that kind of debate and discussion is what we very much welcome. That we want people to draw their own conclusions. You know, our job was to bring it to the world and make our best effort to authenticate it and to,
Yes.
you know, not be presenting something that wasn't real. But now it's out there, and it's, you know, the world is welcome to study and absorb it and draw
Yes.
their own conclusions.
You know what I like so much about it is how relevant it became on YouTube in the community, right? So it's not a
Yes.
niche anymore to talk about a new composition, because before maybe just really professors would do it,
Right.
but now everybody talks about if it's or if it's not a real Chopin. right?
Yeah, and I've loved seeing that. I love the ones that where people are saying they think it's real, and I equally love the ones where they're saying they're having doubts and they're debating that. And um so I think that's just as you say, it's sort of gone beyond the walls of academia, and it's out there. And
Finally,
yes,
finally, right?
exactly.
So to get this momentum and the relevance in classical
Yes.
music is really quite, yeah, it doesn't happen often, right?
Right, exactly. And there's been
Yeah.
already several live performances. I think the UK British premiere was this weekend, and there's been a
Mhm.
performance in Poland already, and there's already a performance planned in New York.
Yeah.
And I'm sure others are in the works as well, and recordings and so forth. So,
How beautiful. Do you think it's likely that this continues, this small streak of rediscovering pieces?
it's always possible. I think it was unlikely before this, and it remains unlikely. Um, just in the sense that it happens so rarely. I think the last time for Chopin, the last time it happened was in the 1930s that a brand new piece of music was found.
Yeah, I
Of
didn't know
course,
that. Okay.
the recent Mozart discovery, there was a discovery, I believe, of a Brahms work in about 15 years ago. So it does certainly happen from time to time. And there are many archives and libraries like the Morgan out there. And one of the things people may not realize is that um, if there's a library or an archive with a large collection, that doesn't mean that all of it has been cataloged and sorted through and
Hmm.
accounted for.
Hmm.
Sometimes, as in this case, we received this collection of a large number of items, and it takes several years to go through it, sort it, and then to make it available online. And sometimes it takes even decades for much larger collections. So there's
Oh,
always
yeah.
the chance that there's something sitting in a library somewhere that is going to be found and discovered. And that's what happened in this case. And of course, it can happen again, but it just doesn't tend to happen very often.
Yeah, true. But do you think this is a good impulse for maybe archives to, I don't know, give more resources to search
Absolutely.
the,
Yes,
yeah?
I'm glad you say that. I always, our libraries and archives can always benefit from more support and more resources to honestly, it comes down to staff time, and the
Mm,
ability
yeah.
to have
Yeah.
someone just because it takes time to sit and go through, and it takes care. It's not something you can do in a rush. You have to really be looking at and carefully at what you see, and it's easy to miss something
Mm,
significant, and that can easily happen. Someone could page through a folder of papers, and there could be something incredibly valuable, but it doesn't maybe look exciting, and they're
mm,
busy and they're distracted and they move on, and maybe it takes another several years for someone to kind of realize the significance, or maybe they post it on their online catalog, and then a researcher later finds it and says, oh, this is very significant. So it happens
mm.
on all different ways.
But do you have a shortage on researchers? Because look, I
Well,
studied music and you can put me in an archive and I see the best works and I would probably not notice, like a real
well,
Beethoven, for example.
Well, I mean, I think every library probably has a shortage of would like to have more staff and more time.
Mm,
There's
mm,
always more to be done. You know, at the Morgan, we're all very busy with mounting exhibitions and so forth. So we get a lot done, but it would always be nice to get to have additional time and resources.
yeah. Can we come back to this moment when you played the piece the first time? I think on BBC I listened to a short interview of you where you said that there was a great moment where you really felt that you were probably one of the first persons on the planet playing this piece, right?
I think I probably was the first person in at least many decades.
It's
there was
crazy. Yeah.
yeah, and that was a kind of exciting feeling. It's of course at that point I still wasn't sure if it was genuine, so I was sort of cautiously excited, but I allowed myself to enjoy that moment, and I had the melody stuck in my head for about a
Oh,
week,
great.
just sort of turning over in my mind. Um, yeah.
Ah, great. Okay. And how many times does it happen that you take something home or like a photograph
Well, yeah,
But
certainly I did not take the original home, just to be clear.
sure, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I made a printout. That happens occasionally, but very often, I mean, much more often, it's a known, piece of music, and I just study it here at the Morgan.
Okay, and what's like your daily work at the Morgan?
So there's kind of three main aspects of my job. I mount exhibitions, and I organize and plan them. So that Ballet Bruce exhibition behind me here is an example and that really can take the bulk of my time. There's a lot of research and planning and finding the objects that will go in the exhibition, and then in this case, writing an exhibition catalog, the book, and then all the labels for the didactics for the walls, and planning the gallery space. It's really
Mhm.
a lot goes into that. And there's a couple of other exhibitions coming up that will be announced that I'm working on now. Another aspect of my job is to make acquisitions for the collection. In other words, to buy new items. For example, I buy music manuscripts of different kinds, different composers, and also we have a large collection of rare printed music. So
Mhm.
first editions of famous pieces of music or things like
Oh,
that.
great.
So we're always adding to the collection. And then the third main aspect is caring for the existing collection,
Mhm.
meaning cataloging, making sure things are physically stored, safely, organizing the collection. So it was that third area where this occurred, where I was going through and trying to organize this collection that had been already at the Morgan for a little while. And to be honest, I didn't expect to find something like this, and I
Mhm.
would have done it sooner. But it was
Yeah.
the collection I did, it was sort of something it was on my to-do list, and I thought, oh, I have to get to this at some point. And I finally had time to work on it. And then to my surprise, there was this very exciting item in it.
All right. Do you know where this collection came from?
Yes, so it came to us as a bequest, meaning it came at the death of the owner as a gift of the collection of Arthur Zatz, who uh, I don't know a lot about him, but he was involved with the University of Rochester Eastman School of Music in Rochester, and he had acquired it from a friend of his, Augustus Witten, and actually it had gone to his wife Jean Witten, who is a Juilliard trained
Mm.
flutist, who held on to the collection until her death. So it goes back to those collectors, and we're still working on where it came from before that, and that's always an important question for this
Yeah.
kind of thing. Provenance, who are all the past owners, and you can't always
Man.
be sure. So
Yeah.
we're not certain all the way back to when it left Chopin's hands.
Great. What a pity that all of these people will never know what they had there in their collection.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it makes me. I believe that Mr. Witten and probably his wife appreciated it,
Mm.
and knew they had something of value. And we're in touch with their children, so we're going to be talking more
Ah,
about it with
great.
them too. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Also for
Yeah.
their family history.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Great, great. Um, Thank you so much. I really enjoy just talking about this. It
Yeah,
is
it's fun to go over it.
for you it may be daily business, right? But for a lot of people it's not.
No, and it's as I explored, I've sort of found new aspects to think about, and it's continues to be interesting.
Yeah. How do you like all the performances which pop up now in the internet? Are you more like the historical informed guy to play
I
it
mean,
on a historical keyboard or?
I'm honestly, I do value that, and I enjoy that approach in my own listening and in general. But I'm also I'm quite open, and I've enjoyed many different approaches. There's the long performance that was posted on the New York Times, which I found very beautiful. There are others that have a more kind of dry approach. The waltz melody kind of has a light sort of dancing quality in the performance, and it's mostly I've just been enjoying the variety and seeing the way that a piece of music a manuscript, notes on the page can give rise to so many different interpretations of even of this tiny, short little piece of music. There have also been a few cases where people, there's one of the things that people are debating is whether it's truly a complete work or whether it was something that Chopin started and then maybe intended to go on and write more, because it is so short and it feels sort of like you want to hear more music. Some argue that it truly is a complete, very compact work of music that stands alone. But some people have actually already composed sort of completions, meaning they wrote their own continuation, and they're quite wonderful. I mean, I've been amazed at the talent of people writing in the style of Chopin. And there's some where people have played the beginning and then they improvise their own. They just go on. They just keep playing kind of in the style and use the melody, and I love that.
Which for sure happened to Chopin's
which
time,
Chopin
right?
would have done, certainly.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
sort of reanimating his spirit, so to speak. Yeah.
Wow, great. And could you give me a short analysis about the piece? Like, what do you like about it? You said that the melody stuck in your head for a couple of days.
So one of the things that's been discussed is that it's a slightly unusual piece, especially for a waltz. Some people have mentioned that it actually sounds a bit more like one of his mazurkas, which is also 3/4 time, triple time, where there's more of an emphasis on the third beat, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So there's kind of and whereas a waltz, it's more the emphasis on the first beat, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like sort of a dancing quality. And some have felt that this waltz has a bit of a mazurka quality. And that would also explain one of the unusual features that the first 8 measures are this very dark, sort of foreboding, dramatic music with this very loud outburst. And he wrote a triple forte, which means as loud as possible, which is very unlike him, uncharacteristic. That was one of the aspects that people feel maybe that's not really him, and we can't know for sure. But there certainly is other music outside of his waltzes that have that quality. So it's not out of character for him in general. It's more unusual for a waltz, which suggests perhaps, even though it says waltz right on it, perhaps it's sort of not really entirely a waltz. It kind of has other aspects in it. And then after this first 8 measures of this dark and foreboding, there's this, the main melody starts and with the pa pa, left hand dum bum ba bum ba, where it's a more classic waltz kind of sound. And that melody, I think many people feel is very Chopin. It has this melancholy and this sort of longing in it that is very characteristic. And then it breaks into the major key, the relative major, C major. Just for a moment, it's almost like the clouds come out. And that is also very, very Chopin-esque, very typical of him. So he packs a lot into a short, very small space. And there's also aspects of his music that are present. For example, he's very meticulous about voice leading and the way that the notes follow one another. And he was a great, he loved the music of J.S. Bach and admired the counterpoint and the precision of that. And we think of Chopin as so kind of romantic and emotional, but his music is so precise at the same time. And
interesting.
He doesn't let anything be wasted. And that is certainly the case with this very short piece. There's this repeated descending chromatic 3 notes at the beginning, and it keeps returning in different places. So it kind of knits the whole thing together as a unified composition. And that's very typical of him. He's thinking not only on the kind of emotional level, but on the technical level as well.
Oh, interesting. Thank you. So what came to my mind is because it's so present now in social media and especially on YouTube, one big goal of mine is like to somehow bring classical music a little bit into younger generations, right? I mean, it's everybody's goal, but it's not easy. So I
Yes,
thought
sir.
this piece is technically maybe not that difficult like other
Right.
Chopin pieces, right?
Yes.
And with all this relevance, what it has now on social media, maybe a great start for
Mhm.
younger generations, right? To be hyped about this piece and think, all right, I'm going, instead of swiping 3 hours on TikTok, I will sit on the keyboard of the family in the
Yeah,
afternoon, right?
I
What do you
love
think?
that.
Is
No,
there?
I'm really glad you say that. I think you're right. It's so hard to attract younger audiences and younger players, and I
Mm,
think you're right. This is a great opportunity for that. And as you say too, it's and this has been commented on, that it's not technically as challenging for a pianist
mhm.
as many other Chopin works. So it's sort of a good place to begin. If you want to play Chopin, this is a good first piece to learn, because you can do it. And I can attest to that, because I'm not a very good pianist, but I was able to, get through it enough to hear it. So I encourage people, even if you don't consider yourself a pianist, um, you know, print it out, put it on the piano, and give it a try. And it's fun just to hear it, even if it's sort of
Yeah.
halting.
I
So
mean, how many times does it happen that you have one page as
exactly,
a
yeah.
pianist,
Also, yeah,
right?
it's short, and it's not
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you're
yeah.
seeing 20 pages of music, this kind of slog through.
Yes,
It's you
yes.
can you can focus on it. And I've noticed that too in the responses. People are able to spend a lot of time focusing on this very short amount of music, delving into the detail. There's a lot to get out of it, even in that compact space. As I was mentioning before, there's so many details of the voice leading and the way, and there's, even in such a short space, there's very different sections and different things happening. So it tells a
Yeah,
story in this very compact way.
great. Amazing. Robin, I thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
pleasure.
I'm very happy to have heard all that information.
Oh, it's great. I'm glad to spend this time. This is the most kind of extended conversation I've had, and it's nice to be able to delve in
All right.
into some of the more of the details and nuances. So I
Yes.
appreciate that.
All right, everybody. That wraps up our first episode of the MuDi podcast. Stay tuned for more episodes. Next, I will talk to my former cello professor, Professor Ksenia Jankovic, about the cello sonatas by Johann Sebastian Bach. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, and I see you in the next one.